In northern Tanzania, where the Great Rift Valley has torn the earth for over 65 million years, there exists a people who believe they arrived in the world by sliding down the neck of a giraffe. The Hadzabe have lived in this same landscape for 50,000 years, hunting exactly as their ancestors did when the first modern humans began to spread across the planet. Today, only 300 to 350 people remain living in this ancestral way. And when one of these hunters manages to bring down an African giraffe, something extraordinary happens. The entire community abandons its camp and moves to where the animal fell. If you are passionate about wild animals and true documentaries, do not leave this video. Watch until the end, subscribe to the channel now, and comment where you are watching from. The first thing you need to understand about the Hadzabe is that they do not live in the past. They live in a continuous present that has simply never changed. While civilizations were born and died around the Mediterranean, while empires built pyramids and cathedrals, while humanity invented agriculture, writing, the wheel, gunpowder, and the cell phone, the Hadzabe continued doing exactly what they had always done: hunting, gathering, moving through the savannah as the seasons dictated, existing in such perfect harmony with their environment that their oral history does not record a single episode of famine. None. In 50,000 years. Think about that for a moment. While medieval Europe buried millions dead from the Black Death, while imperial China faced droughts that decimated entire provinces, while American civilizations collapsed, the Hadzabe simply continued finding food every day for 500 consecutive centuries. They inhabit the shores of Lake Eyasi, a shallow saltwater body that extends for about 80 kilometers in length and 14 kilometers in average width, at the bottom of the Great Rift Valley in northern Tanzania. The lake sits just over 1,030 meters above sea level, positioned at the base of the Serengeti Plateau, about 75 kilometers southwest of the famous Ngorongoro crater and 100 kilometers south of the Serengeti National Park. The surrounding landscape is a mixture of open savannas, groves of acacias twisted by relentless wind and sun, and towering baobabs that can live for over 2,000 years and reach trunks of monumental circumference. Daum palms grow along the lake shores, creating groves that seem almost tropical, in contrast to the surrounding aridity. The vegetation is dominated by drought-adapted species: Acacia tortilis, Acacia mellifera, Commiphora africana. Thorny shrubs form dense thickets in some areas, while others are completely open, golden grasses waving under the hot wind. The temperature is almost always scorching. The valley receives only 500 to 600 millimeters of rain per year, concentrated in 2 seasons: the long rains from March to May and the short rains from November to December. The rest of the year is dry, brutally dry. During the prolonged dry season, which runs from June to October, evaporation dramatically exceeds precipitation. Parts of the lake simply disappear, transforming into plains of shimmering white salt where it is possible to walk from one shore to the other. It is during this period that animals concentrate around the few remaining water sources: springs that sprout from rocky slopes, puddles that form in natural depressions of the terrain, stretches of the Sibiti River that still maintain some flow. Wildlife converges on these points like pilgrims to a sanctuary, and it is exactly during this period that Hadzabe hunters set their ambushes for the great African giraffe. Consider the challenge this represents. An adult giraffe can measure between 4 meters and 30 centimeters and 5 meters and 70 centimeters in height. The recorded record for a male was nearly 6 meters, tall enough to look over a 2-story building. The average weight of an adult male is 1,192 kilograms, the equivalent of approximately 2 robust draft horses. Females are smaller, weighing an average of 828 kilograms, but still represent an extraordinary amount of meat and resources. The animal's skin can be up to 20 millimeters thick in some parts of the body, the equivalent of 2 stacked coins. It is natural armor that evolved over millions of years to protect against predators, thorns, and parasites. The characteristic spots are not merely decorative. Each pattern is unique as a human fingerprint, and the coloration helps regulate body temperature and camouflage the animal among the shadows of the acacias. The legs of a giraffe are lethal weapons. A single kick can generate enough force to crush the skull of an adult lion or break its spinal column instantly. Lions are the only natural predators that pose a real threat to adult giraffes, and even then, attacks frequently end with the predator dead or gravely injured. The hoof of an adult giraffe is approximately the size of a dinner plate, a hard surface with sharp edges capable of causing devastating damage. The animal's heart is an extraordinary machine of biological engineering. It weighs about 10 kilograms, approximately the size of a basketball, and measures about 60 centimeters in length. It must pump blood at a pressure approximately twice as high as that of any other large mammal to successfully send oxygen to that brain positioned meters high at the top of the neck. A complex pressure regulation system called rete mirabile prevents excess blood from flooding the brain when the giraffe lowers its head to drink water. And the eyes, positioned on the sides of the head, high atop that neck which functions as a walking observation tower. The bulging eyes of a giraffe can see predators approaching from kilometers away in all directions. Vision is complemented by extremely sharp hearing and smell. Any suspicious movement, any unusual sound, any scent of a predator carried by the wind, and the giraffe is already on alert, ready to flee at speeds of up to 56 kilometers per hour. Now think of the Hadzabe hunter. He measures an average of 1 meter and 60 centimeters. He weighs perhaps 55 kilograms, with the lean and muscular build of someone who has walked 15,000 steps a day since he learned to walk. His body displays the marks of a lifetime in the African bush, scars from hunts, snake bites, thorns and scorpions, falls from baobabs while collecting honey, perhaps even an encounter with a leopard. His only weapon is a wooden bow nearly 2 meters high, made of hard and flexible wood, so powerful that it requires a force of approximately 311 newtons to be fully drawn. This is equivalent to about 70% of the archer's own body weight. Hadzabe boys receive their first bows at 3 years of age and spend their entire lives perfecting their technique, practicing daily until the movement becomes as natural as breathing. The arrows are handcrafted from Congoroko wood, fletched with guinea fowl feathers for flight stabilization. The metal tips are obtained through trade with the blacksmiths of the neighboring Datoga tribe, cold forged from construction nails or other available pieces of metal. The arrows travel at about 45 meters per second, with an estimated kinetic energy of approximately 37 joules. But the hunter needs to approach no closer than 25 to 50 meters from the animal to have any chance of an effective hit. 50 meters from a giraffe with 360-degree panoramic vision, acute hearing, and a sense of smell capable of detecting human presence from kilometers away. One-on-one in open ground it would be suicide. But the Hadzabe do not hunt giraffes by improvisation. They do not chase the animal across the savannah. They do not attempt to surround it in a group. They do not use mechanical traps or dug pits. They transform the landscape itself into a silent and deadly ambush. During the dry season, when water becomes scarce and animals have no choice but to visit the few remaining sources, the Hadzabe know every well, every spring, every depression where moisture persists, even when everything around is parched. They have known these places for countless generations. Their grandfathers hunted there. Their grandfathers' grandfathers did as well, and the ancestors before them, receding in time to eras that written history itself does not reach. The knowledge has been passed from father to son for millennia, encoded in a language that resembles no other on earth. Hadzan is what linguists call a language isolate. For decades, researchers tried to classify it along with the Khoisan languages of southern Africa because both utilize click sounds. But more detailed analyses revealed there is no real kinship. Hadzan emerged and evolved completely independent of any other known linguistic family. It is possibly one of the oldest languages still spoken by human beings on the planet. It contains click sounds and guttural snaps that seem impossible for those who did not grow up speaking it. It has no writing system. It exists only in oral tradition, passed from generation to generation, through stories, songs, and conversations around fires. Approximately 800 people still speak it fluently, mostly older adults. The youth are gradually migrating to Swahili, the lingua franca of East Africa. and part of this ancestral vocabulary is dedicated exclusively to hunting. Dozens of different words to describe dead animals in different states, prey conditions, types of terrain, flight behaviors, meat qualities. A linguistic precision born of 50,000 years of observing, tracking, killing, surviving. When a hunter decides to set an ambush for big game, he first identifies the ideal location. The Hadzabe call these ambush positions Salamida. It might be a natural water source that persists even in the severest drought. It might be a cluster of baobabs with ripe fruit, as these trees can bear fruit for up to 5 consecutive months and attract various animals. It might be a concentration of termite mounds that attracts aardvarks and other mammals. It might be a cluster of young acacia pods. The hunter studies the terrain with the attention of one who learned to read the landscape before learning to speak. He observes animal movement patterns over days. He notes which trails are most used, where vegetation was recently trampled, where there is fresh dung. He analyzes the prevailing wind direction in that specific area because a gust carrying his scent in the wrong direction can ruin days of preparation in seconds. Then he builds the blind. It is generally a simple structure, almost primitive in its functional elegance. Interwoven branches forming a low barrier, dry grass covering the openings, leaves and debris from the environment itself, disguising any straight lines that might betray a human presence. The material is collected from the immediate vicinity, so there is no difference in color or texture. The blind must look like just another bush among so many others in the African landscape. The hunter must remain completely invisible, and even more importantly, completely odorless. Giraffes have an extremely sharp sense of smell. Any human scent carried by the wind, even at great distances, will make the animal completely alter its route. Hadzabe hunters avoid using any scented substance. Some cover themselves with mud or ash to mask natural body odor. The position of the blind relative to the prevailing wind is calculated with absolute precision. The wait begins at dusk. The sun descends behind the western escarpment of the Rift Valley, those cliffs of nearly 1,000 meters that form the southeastern border of the Serengeti. The sky transforms into an explosion of impossible colors, intense orange, blood red, deep purple, shades of pink that seem painted by some divine artist. Temperatures, which during the day can exceed 40 degrees Celsius, begin to drop rapidly. The first nocturnal animals begin to move. Hyenas call in the distance with their characteristic shrieks. Jackals bark. Owls begin their hunt. The hunter remains motionless. He prefers full moon nights. Scientific research on hunter-gatherers has discovered that nocturnal ambush hunting among the Hadzabe is more than 3 times more productive than any other hunting method. The reason is elegantly simple. The silvery light of the moon allows the hunter to see animals approaching the water, while he himself remains submerged in the dense shadows of the blind. The animals, accustomed to moving at night when predators like lions are also active, maintain a certain vigilance, but lower their guard slightly near known water sources. During the late dry season, about 60% of all big game obtained by the Hadzabe comes from these nocturnal ambushes in strategically positioned salamidas. Nearly half of all large prey for the entire year is acquired through this ancestral technique, refined over thousands of human generations. The hours pass slowly. The hunter remains in position, muscles relaxed but ready for instant action, breathing slow and controlled. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, sometimes the entire night. The cold of the African dawn sets in gradually, but he cannot move to warm himself. Any noise, any sudden movement, and days of preparation will be completely wasted. Often the wait is in vain. The animals do not appear, or they appear but detect something wrong and flee before coming within bow range. The hunter returns to camp empty-handed at dawn, sleeps for a few hours, and returns the next night, and the next, and the following. Patience is a virtue the Hadzabe cultivate from childhood. But when a giraffe finally approaches the water on that specific night, bending that immense neck into a vulnerable position to reach the liquid surface, the hunter who has waited for hours is already completely ready. His bow is drawn to the limit, the muscles of his arm and back sustaining those 311 newtons of tension, with the ease of one who has done this thousands of times since childhood. The arrow is perfectly nocked, the guinea fowl feather stabilizing the Kongoroko woodshaft. The metal tip gleams faintly under the moonlight. This is no ordinary arrow. Days before the hunt, the Hadzabe prepared the poison that makes all the difference. The most traditional and most used comes from the desert rose, a succulent plant with the scientific name Adenium obesum, which the Hadzabe know as panjuko. It is an extraordinary plant. A bulbous and swollen trunk to store water in an arid environment, smooth and shiny bark, showy pink or red flowers that seem almost artificial in their beauty. All parts of the plant are extremely toxic. It grows in a few specific places in the Hadzabe region. The main source is on an island on the southeastern shore of Lake Ayasi, where particular soil and moisture conditions allow the succulents to thrive. Hunters travel periodically there, sometimes walking for days, specifically to harvest the raw material they will transform into a lethal weapon. The extraction process is laborious and requires precise knowledge passed from generation to generation. First, the hunter cuts branches from the plant or crushes the pulp still attached to the trunk. Some use the wooden end of their axe, removing the metal blade, as an improvised pestle. The plant is pounded repeatedly until it becomes a fibrous mass completely soaked in white milky sap. The juice is then carefully squeezed into a container. Often it is the same cooking pot the family uses to prepare daily meals. There is no rigid separation between domestic utensils and hunting tools in Hadzabe life. The extracted liquid is taken to the fire and boiled slowly, patiently, until all the water evaporates completely, leaving only a black substance, thick and sticky like tar. Once ready, the pot is washed exhaustively with clean water. One of the women in the camp tests it with the tip of her tongue. If there is still a bitter taste, the washing continues until it disappears. When the bitterness vanishes completely, the pot returns to normal use for cooking food. It is a practicality that might seem alarming to modern sensibilities, but which has worked perfectly for millennia without incident. The mass of black poison is molded like clay and can be carried in the form of a ball for weeks or even months without losing potency. When the hunter is ready to use it, he mixes small amounts with saliva in a mollusk shell and applies the paste directly below the metal tip of the arrow, wrapping it in thin strips that adhere firmly to the wooden shaft. There are other types of poison the Hadzabe utilize. The second most common comes from Strophanthus emini, a climbing plant that grows in the mountainous areas of Hadzabe territory. The Hadzabe call it shanjoko. The poison extracted from its seeds is brown and considered even more potent. A third type, called kalikasi, is obtained through trade with neighboring tribes, as the source plant does not grow in Hadzabe territory. All three types work by the same devastating biochemical principle. They contain cardiac glycosides. These are chemical compounds that interfere directly with the functioning of the heart muscle. When they enter the bloodstream through a wound, they prevent the heart from relaxing between contractions. The muscle locks in a state of permanent systole. The heart can no longer pump blood to vital organs. In humans, death occurs in about 15 minutes. In medium-sized game animals, the average time is 20 minutes. In a giraffe of over 1,000 kilograms, it can take considerably longer. The wounded animal may run for hundreds of meters, even kilometers. It may even seem, in the first moments after being hit, that the arrow caused no significant damage. But the hunter knows. He saw exactly where the arrow entered. He heard the characteristic sound of the tip penetrating living flesh. He noted the animal's instinctive reaction, the startled jump, the flight in a certain direction. Now begins the second phase of the hunt, which requires as much skill as the first. The tracking. The first signs of poisoning appear within minutes. The animal begins to drool excessively, saliva foaming at the corners of the mouth as the glycosides begin to affect the nervous system. Then comes vomiting and diarrhea as the digestive system reacts violently to the toxic compounds. The giraffe becomes progressively weak, lethargic, unstable on those immense legs that once supported it with such elegance and power. The Hadzabe follows the wounded giraffe with the patience of one who knows that time is on his side now. He reads the signs on the ground as you would read a book in your mother tongue. Deeper tracks on one side indicate the animal is staggering, throwing weight unevenly. Broken branches at specific heights reveal where it passed. Torn leaves show where the animal stumbled and sought support desperately. Drops of blood darken the dry earth, marking the path like breadcrumbs in a fairy tale forest. Eventually the giraffe falls. It is a strange moment, almost anticlimactic after all the tension. The largest living land animal, that giant of an impossible neck, who throughout its life looked at the world from above, simply collapses. The legs give way under the weight of the body. The body topples sideways. The neck bends at an unnatural angle. The head hits the ground with a dull impact that echoes through the silent savannah. When this happens, the hunter does not run to it alone. There is no individual celebration. There is no victory cry. What happens next defines Hadzabe culture in a profound and unique way. The hunter returns to camp. The walk can take hours depending on how far the giraffe ran before finally falling. He usually arrives at dawn, exhausted but controlled. The camp is already waking up, fires being relit with embers preserved during the night, children stretching and yawning, women preparing straw baskets for the day's gathering, men checking their bows and arrows. The typical camp is a collection of perhaps half a dozen huts made of curved and interwoven branches, covered with golden dry grass. These are structures that can be built in less than 2 hours and abandoned without any remorse. About 20 to 30 people live there, nuclear families, respected elders, children of all ages running between the huts. There is no chief, no formal leader, no visible hierarchy. Decisions are made by informal consensus through conversation. The hunter announces the kill, and then something extraordinary happens. Everyone stops what they are doing, absolutely everyone. The women who were preparing to dig tubers in distant fields, the men who were repairing arrows or resting in the shade, the children who were playing between the huts, the elders who were warming their bones in the morning sun. Everyone, because a giraffe is too large to be carried to the camp. So the camp goes to the giraffe. In less than 2 hours, the Hadzabe completely dismantle their lives. The branch huts are left behind or quickly taken apart to reuse the materials. Personal belongings, which fit into a single animal skin blanket, are rolled up and thrown over shoulders. What does a Hadzabe person actually own in the world? A cooking pot, a water container made from a gourd, an axe with a traded metal blade, a bow and arrows, a hunting knife in a dik-dik leather sheath, clothes on their back, a few smaller items kept in a bag hung around the neck. That is all. The entire community marches through the African bush to where the animal fell. Women carrying babies tied to their backs with cloths or skins. Small children being pulled by the hand or carried in the arms of elders. Elders walking at their own pace without haste because no one is left behind under any circumstance. When they arrive at the site of the kill, the work begins immediately. New branch huts are erected around the carcass using material available nearby. Fires are lit with the traditional technique, a hard wooden stick rotated rapidly between the palms against a piece of soft wood with a small hole, creating enough friction to produce a glowing ember that is then blown onto dry grass until it becomes a flame. And the process of utilizing the animal that will feed the entire group for whole weeks begins. An adult male giraffe can weigh over 1,200 kilograms. Scientific studies on carcass yield in giraffes show that males yield approximately 62% of their weight in usable meat, females about 57%. This means a large male can provide between 600 and 700 kilograms of pure meat, 600 kilograms of protein. For a group of 30 people who normally spend only 3 to 4 hours a day seeking food, a single giraffe represents an almost unimaginable abundance. It is the equivalent of weeks of successful hunts concentrated into a single immense animal. The meat is processed in various ways over the following days. Part is consumed immediately, cut into pieces, and roasted directly over the crackling fires. The fat melts and drips onto the embers, creating an aroma that attracts all the scavengers of the region. Hyenas circling at a safe distance, vultures circling patiently in the blue sky, jackals lurking among the bushes. But not all meat belongs to everyone equally. The Hadzabe have a concept called epeme that governs the distribution of certain specific parts of the animal. Only men who have already killed big game, which usually happens in their 20s, can be called epeme men. and only epime men can eat certain parts considered special and sacred: the kidney, the lung, the heart, the neck, the tongue, the animal's genitals. These cuts are consumed separately, in an exclusively male meal that occurs away from the women and children, usually at night when everyone else has already slept. It is a moment of camaraderie among hunters, of shared stories, of transmission of knowledge from the elders to the younger ones. The rest of the meat, however, is divided in an extraordinarily egalitarian manner. The Hadzabe have no chiefs. They have no formal social hierarchy. They do not accumulate wealth or possessions beyond the minimum necessary to survive. When there is meat, everyone eats until they are satisfied. When there is scarcity, everyone goes hungry equally, without exception. Anthropologists who have studied the Hadzabe for decades describe this as one of the most genuinely egalitarian societies ever documented in human history. Anthropologist James Woodburn wrote that the Hadzabe are obsessed with equality, that differences in power, wealth, and status are systematically subverted by deeply rooted social norms. The area around the original wound, where the poison entered the bloodstream, must be carefully removed and discarded. Cardiac glycosides can be dangerous if consumed in quantity, but the rest of the animal is completely safe. The toxin does not spread through the muscle meat during the time between poisoning and death. The days following the slaughter of a giraffe are of genuine plenty and celebration. No one needs to go out to hunt or gather. Food is there, abundant, renewed at every meal. The nights include dances and songs that echo through the dark savannah, stories told around the fires, laughter of children with full bellies for the first time in weeks. The Hadzabe have a ritual dance, also called epime, that occurs only on moonless nights, in total and absolute darkness. All the campfires are completely extinguished, and in the darkness, the men dance, stamping their feet rhythmically, singing ancestral songs that connect the living to the dead, humans to cosmic forces. Ishoko and Hain are the central mythological figures of this cosmology. According to the Hadzabe, in the old days, the sky was below the earth. Ishoko and Hain rolled up sky and earth like two sheets of leather and swapped their positions, placing the sky above us. These figures also gave humans access to fire, taught them how to sit, how to choose places to live, which foods could be eaten. Ishoko is solar and feminine. Hain, her husband, is lunar and masculine. But the contemporary reality of the Hadzabe is much less idyllic than this description might suggest. Until 30 years ago, they regularly hunted large animals like zebras, buffaloes, and giraffes in the dense acacia thickets of their homeland, the Yaeda Chini Valley. They shared the territory with rhinoceroses, lions, elephants, and large herds of animals. Today, most of these large mammals have decreased drastically. The Hadzabe depend increasingly on smaller game: tiny dik-diks, monkeys, wild pigs. Giraffe hunting has become a rare event. Hadzabe territory has shrunk 90% in the last 50 years. Herders brought cattle that compete for water and scare away game. Farmers cleared forests to plant onions. Highways cut through animal migration paths. Fences divide communal land. Of a population of about 1,300 people, only a third still live as hunter-gatherers. The others have partially integrated into the modern economy. Some push to the lowest rungs of the Tanzanian social scale,